Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into how colleges enroll in their schools. My guest today is Sean Kaylor, and he's the Vice President of Enrollment and Management. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, great to be here.
All right, Sean. So I usually start my guests out where they went to college. So where'd you go?
All right, well, I grew up in Mystic, Connecticut, and I applied to a number of schools, mostly in the Northeast. Narrowed it down to UConn, Marist up in Poughkeepsie, and St. Joe's University down here in Philly, and ended up enrolling at Marist. So I spent 4 years there, and I rode crew and was pretty involved and had a great experience.
Great.
So that's where it all started.
Oh, fantastic. So what was the process that you took to pick Marist and eventually work there?
Well, it's a lot different now in terms of selecting a college than it was then. At that point in the mid-'80s, we were encouraged by our guidance counselor to pick research schools and eventually apply to about 5. Yeah, 1 or 2 safety schools, a couple schools that you felt pretty good about getting into, and then 1 reach school. And so I did that and ended up being accepted pretty much everywhere I applied, so I had some good options. And in the end, it really came down to visiting the campuses and where I felt most comfortable. But once I stepped foot on Marist, and it's located right in the mid-Hudson River Valley with the Hudson River as the backdrop. Yeah. It's about 250 acres. It's beautiful, even better now than it was when I started. So that was it. I made the final visit on accepted student open house, and that was my choice. Wow. And then ultimately, when I graduated, my advisor said, well, Sean, what are your plans? This is like February of my senior year. And I said, I was a business major with an HR concentration and a minor in psychology. And I said, I think I want to work in human resources somewhere. Maybe I'll move home with my parents and work at Pfizer, which is a big company in the southeastern Connecticut area.
Okay.
And my advisor said, well, that's a fine idea. Have you talked to your parents about this? Do they want you back home? And I said, that's a good question. I'm really not sure. And she said, well, I encourage you to do that, of course, but, what do you think about, you're so involved at the school and you loved it here, why don't you look into admissions work, where you get to go represent the college and visit high schools and go to college fairs and talk to parents and prospective students and tell them about your experience and maybe encourage some of them to come here. I said, I've never given that a thought. So I actually met with the vice president of enrollment at the time, and he remembers me doing sprints up and down the hill for crew. So we had a nice conversation, and ultimately it led to an interview, and he hired me that July. Wow. With a full-time job.
Wow. So how long have you been at Marist College?
Well, I graduated in 1990, and I've never left. Wow. So it's been quite some time now. Yeah. My first 3 years as an employee, I was an assistant director of admission. And basically my job was to go out and promote the college, which I did in the mid-Atlantic states, from DC up to New Jersey. Okay. And it was great. And I got to see a lot of the Northeast and meet a lot of fantastic people and encourage many of them to come up and visit and apply, and ultimately some of them ended up enrolling at Marist. So it was fantastic.
So now over the almost 30 years, at the school, you've gone all the way up to Vice President of Enrollment now. So it takes a little while to get to the point of where you are today.
It did. Well, it happened pretty quickly, actually. So after my 3 years as assistant director, typically at that age, you start wondering, is this it? There's got to be a little more. Yeah. So I wanted more responsibility, but I was also thinking perhaps I should go to grad school. So I applied to a few places like the University of Maryland. And before I heard back, they decided to promote me to associate director. So I was associate for a year. And then, and I was quite content and had some more responsibilities. But then our director, wonderful woman from the Boston area, she and her husband ended up starting a business together, and she moved back to Boston, which left the director job open.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, they took a chance on me. I threw my hat in the ring, and I was promoted to director of admission at about the age of 25. So I did that for 4 years, and then the vice president who hired me in the first place ended up retiring, and I threw my hat in the ring. And admittedly, on paper, I was not the most qualified individual, but I think my passion for the school and my work ethic, I think, led to the opportunity where the president really took a chance on me. And I told him I wouldn't let him down, and I like to think that I haven't, because I'm still employed there. But the job has changed incredibly over the years. So when I first took that job, I was just overseeing admission and financial aid for the Poughkeepsie campus. And that's just for undergraduate students. Fast forward to today, I now oversee admission, financial aid, and marketing for all undergraduate, graduate, and non-traditional programs for our main campus in Poughkeepsie, as well as our branch campus in Florence, Italy.
Wow,
fantastic. Yeah, it's been great. It's been fun.
So now, the name of the show is Secrets to College Planning.
Yes.
So what is it that high school students need to know to get enrolled, not just at Marist College, but any college? What's the process that they have to take?
Well, I always recommend that students and parents, it's not an easy process. You really have to do a lot of homework and a lot of legwork, like anything else that's important to you, a big decision, a big financial decision in your life. You know, you really have to put some time and effort into doing the research. And if you do it correctly, then I think the pathway through the process is a lot more manageable. So what I recommend is parents of rising sophomores and juniors, actually juniors and seniors in high school, that they start research at the very least in the spring of their junior year. And at this point, it's probably a little late. So I would say even the fall of your junior year, you should be out first talking to your guidance counselor and trying to establish what your interests are. You know, how far away from home you might want to go. Do you want a big school, small school? And perhaps come up with an initial list. I would then use, and this is how it's changed from when I started, the technology that's available today to help you hone in on the schools that are probably most appropriate for you. And admittedly, some of them you've probably never heard of, which is a good thing. So there are multiple websites that students can go to, like Princeton Review, among others, and they help you with your college search. So you punch in a different, multiple variables about size and program that you want and distance from home, etc., and other opportunities, perhaps like study abroad. And it'll take all those variables and spit out a list for you. And sometimes that list can be a little unbearable, and I'd highly recommend going back in and adding a couple different variables to get it down to perhaps a manageable number of maybe 15 to 25 schools.
Okay.
And at that point, start doing your research on their websites. And maybe you can eliminate some of them just based on what you find in their websites. But once you've honed it down to a manageable number, say 10 to 15, then you really have to start going to visit the schools. Admittedly, they all look great on the websites. They all look great in the publications. But the truth is, you really are not going to have a great idea about how it feels to you. Is this a place where I can see myself spending the next 4 years of my life and meeting friends that are going to be friends for a lifetime at this institution? And I think, so that's why the visit is critical to start.
So once they get to the visit, what are some of the processes that the admissions department takes at the colleges to even start looking at these kids? Because there's a lot of misconceptions out there that, you know, colleges look at the diversity. You know, they only take a certain amount of girls, they only take a certain amount of white boys, they only take a certain amount of blacks and Hispanics and Asians and so on. Is there anything to, debunk that type of myth that's out there?
Well, the truth of the matter is each institution has their own priorities. Those priorities can range from quality. We want to bring in more students who have 8 AP classes or more. We want to bring in more valedictorians. It can also range to programmatic diversity. So we have a great technology program and a partnership with IBM and 100% placement for those students. So it's a priority for us to enroll as many of those students as possible. And now we compete with some of the best schools in the country for computer science and technology students.
Wow.
Matter of fact, we enrolled a great class this year, and we found out just recently that one of the students in computer science who initially had chosen us was removed from the wait list at Cornell and ultimately decided to go to Cornell, which is it's understandable, painful for us, but an Ivy League is an Ivy League school. So we congratulated him. So getting back to your question, it really is institutional priorities, and those can really range on a number of variety of different areas.
So it's not so much the diversity of the student; it's what the school is looking for, what they're good at, and that's how they're looking at the students that are coming in.
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of quality, programmatic, diversity, and that could mean international diversity, could mean religious diversity, could mean a number of things. So I guess the easiest way to explain it is there's no prescripted, you've got to take this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
It's here are our priorities, and we're going to do our best to reach out and market to the students to try to generate a large enough applicant pool for students in those areas where we're still admitting kids based on their academic criteria, but we're hoping that we get enough of them where we start to fill some of or meet our institutional priorities.
So now, if a student out there has a tag, what they call, maybe they're an athlete or they're a fine arts major, or they play in the band, or they're a circus acrobat of some sort or something like that. Does that give that student more of an advantage to someone else that's coming in?
It may, if it's an institutional priority. For example, we have our branch campus in Florence, Italy. We have some very unique programs over there. We offer traditional study abroad, which is 1 semester, junior or senior year. We offer an entire freshman Florence experience. 40 freshmen who are accepted to the New York campus go through an interview process. We want to make sure we choose the right ones who can handle being away for an entire year, freshman year. And they go over and spend their first year there. We also have a master's degree program in museum studies, but we also offer 7 bachelor degree programs, full bachelor degrees. So they never come to Poughkeepsie. They go for 4 years to our Florence campus. So yes, we would tag some of those students as these are institutional priorities for us, and they would be looked at a little more carefully, perhaps. We would do the same for a recruited athlete. We're a Division I institution, and we compete at the highest, not the highest levels, not University of Florida, but certainly competitive Division I. As a matter of fact, our men's lacrosse program just won the MAC championship this weekend.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
So we'll have the pleasure of perhaps playing against Syracuse next weekend, which may or may not be good. We'll see. But it's very exciting for us nonetheless, and I think we'll be competitive. But yes, we try to generate large numbers of applicant pools in the areas of interest for the college that are priorities, and then, yes, we would tag them in the system and track them.
So now, what is the application process at a school like Marist College?
So this past year, typically we receive about 9,000 to 10,000 applications a year, and our freshman class is about 1,150 students. So we'll admit around 35 to 40% of the applicant pool to enroll the class that we want. And the process is basically the application. There are 3 opportunities to apply. One is early decision. Excuse me. which is a binding program. If you apply early decision and you're accepted, you have to deposit immediately and withdraw your applications from other schools. It's pretty standard across higher ed.
Okay.
And then we have an early action opportunity. And that is, you can apply early, you'll hear back from us earlier, but you don't have to commit until May 1, which is the traditional May 1 deposit deadline.
Gotcha.
And then there's the regular admission pool, which you have longer to apply.
Mm-hmm.
You won't hear typically until the middle of March. So it tightens up your window a little bit in terms of knowing whether you're in or not,
Yeah.
because you still have to deposit on May 1. So there are 3 ways to apply.
And so the application process for that is regular applications around December, January?
So early decision is November 1st. Early action, I believe, is December 1st. And regular decision, I think, is February 15th.
Wow.
Now, I'd have to go double check, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure those are the
That was
exact
this past
dates.
year or this upcoming year?
That would be this past year.
Okay.
And next year,
Similar
it would
dates.
probably be very similar. Yeah, we'll review that this summer.
Great. So now, students that take SATs or ACTs, things like that, what do they look at for at a school like Marist College?
So we are one of, there's probably close to 900 to 1,000 schools at this point that several years ago, we did 2 years worth of research and decided to go test optional. Basically what that means is, and for our applicant pool, it's about 75% of the students still submit their standardized test scores, their SAT or ACT, and about 25% do not. The reason we did that is we found that we were losing out. We were losing out on some real high quality students who had taken AP and honors classes and really the toughest curriculum that they could find throughout their high school career. And some of those students, unfortunately, did not fare very well on a standardized test. And unfortunately, I found that we, Marist, were using those test scores, despite the great academic performance of the students in the classroom over 4 years, as a crutch. And it didn't sit well with me because I know these students may not test well, but clearly they have the work ethic and the capability to do well.
Yeah.
So we did 2 years worth of research and presented our findings to the faculty. And essentially, if you ever wanted to look into it, there's a great study. Bates College up in Maine was really the first school that started this. And they have, I think, over 30 years worth of historical data now.
Really?
And what they found was that, person to person, the submitters versus the non-submitters, that their performance in college, once they were admitted, was negligible in terms of the difference in the GPA. The biggest differences they found were if a student had to take another standardized test score after college to get into law school, med school, etc., then the submitters performed much better because, of course, they were better test takers in the beginning than the non-submitters did. Another interesting fact was the number of CEOs that came out of that pool. More non-submitters became CEOs of companies than submitters did.
Really?
It was fascinating. It was really fascinating. But we took a look at our own pool and did the math. We are very similar to Bates in our first 4 or 5 years. I forget when we actually went test optional. But very similar results in terms of performance.
So now, if a student has taken the SATs or ACT, they don't have to put down on their application that they've taken it? They can just submit it into Marist College and...
Well, they would have to declare whether they want them considered or not. So on the application it says, do you plan on applying test optional?
Oh.
And if they do, then we don't, even if we did receive their scores, we would not use them in the evaluation of that student.
Gotcha.
Admittedly, it's one less thing for us to look at. So if you do that, you better make sure you're taking all the right classes and you're pretty competitive, admittedly.
So now, what do schools actually evaluate when the application comes in? Is there certain things that they evaluate?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing clearly is the record in high school, what classes they took, what school they came from, how well they did. And then what did they do outside of the classroom? Were they athletes? Did they work? Did they have some great summer experiences? And it's fascinating. I mean, these students are so talented. That's the fun part is getting their applications, and they all try to point out the differences between themselves, which is what they should do, and all the other 9,000 to 10,000 students who apply.
So that brings up another question then. The essays that these kids do on the application process, does that mean a lot at the college level? Because that's a way of explaining their life.
It is. It is an important part, and we ask for one, and we review them carefully. Admittedly, it's probably more important for students to explain perhaps something that may have happened in their life that shaped them, good or bad. Maybe it was a death in the family. Perhaps it was an illness. Perhaps they started a company, which is cropping up more and more. It's fascinating. Sure. Perhaps they're just musically gifted and they've gone on tour.
Or they've started a foundation of some sort or something like that.
Yep.
Or they've done a lot of charity work.
And that enables us to really dive in and get to know the student a little bit more, and it supplements, of course, their performance in the classroom.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. Now, does Marist comb the whole country and the whole world? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, so back when I was in school at Marist, in the mid-'80s, we probably drew mostly from New York. I would guess 80 to 85%. And the rest were from the Northeast, probably no farther south than Delaware, perhaps. So it was a very local, regional community. And now we have over 55% from out of state.
Wow.
And we have 20% from out of the Northeast. So we get quite a number of international students. We get big numbers of West Coast students. So it's a much more geographically diverse community than when I started, which has been interesting because as you diversify the campus community, the needs that the students have, the support that you have to give them does change a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just close the residence halls over Thanksgiving because the student's not flying back to Turkey for the weekend.
Sure.
So there's a lot of institutional changes that need to happen to be able to support those students, and Marist has been able to successfully navigate that over the years, and it's been fun to watch.
Now, what's some of the benefits that Marist has compared to other schools that are out there?
You know, higher ed in general right now is in a great deal of disruption, and I think if, let's just say, many of them are in financial trouble as well, not unlike many of the industries that have seen similar disruption over the past decade. So there are a number of schools that are in financial trouble, and a lot of us are trying to make sure that we're viable for the future, which means you have to have good programs, you have to meet market demand, but things have changed. So I think what Marist offers that will help us get over the hump here is we've started to look at the 4 years of college in a horizontal manner instead of vertical. So what I mean by that is, so when I went to school, most of us back then, you'd pick a school, you'd stay there for 4 years, you'd get your degree. Perhaps if you were lucky, you did an internship, right, and away you went. And now, at least the way Marist is trying to prepare students for the future, it's much more horizontal. So we use a number of different ways to get students off campus, to experience real life. A number of ways would include our branch campus in Florence, Italy. So just to give you an idea, a freshman who goes over to Florence for their first year, they'll spend their entire first year there, then they'll come back to Poughkeepsie. They'll do their sophomore year at Poughkeepsie. And then junior year, they've already got the bug to study abroad. So they'll do another study abroad for a semester and come back. Wow. And then if they're a business communications or even a technology major, they'll probably do a semester internship experience in our Marist in Manhattan program in New York City. Wow. So they'll live in the city, do an internship, and they may even supplement their class schedule with one class online. And we have a great technology platform, and thanks to IBM and their partnership over the last 30 years. But it's that type of educational experience that we're trying to provide, and we're always looking for new ways to innovate, create programming that's really going to, it has to be a blend of what you're going to learn in the classroom, but really
Real life.
what's going to happen in real life. So
Yes.
we want to get you out. We're also doing a number of experiments with what we call flipped classrooms. So as you probably were in the same classroom environment that I was, you go in, you listen to a lecture, you go home and study, and you take tests, and there's some dialogue.
Yeah.
If there's time in the classroom, there's some dialogue. What we're trying to do is experiment with, you're going to use our technology platform to get all the resources and lecture notes and even videos of the professor before class.
Right.
When you come into class, we're going to spend time, talking about the issues at length, doing small group work, and it's just a much richer type of experience. Admittedly, it's not across the board yet, but it is pretty exciting.
So we're coming to the end of our show.
Okay.
So usually what I ask my guests is, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there?
Hold on. No, I think the college application and enrollment process can be daunting, especially if it's your first time through. What I would recommend is use your resources and start researching early. And the resources I would include would be your guidance counselor at school, websites. I mean, there are plenty of them out there where you can go to for help. And then once you've narrowed that list of schools down and done your research appropriately, you have to go visit. And not just once. You go visit the first time to find out, do I feel right here? Is this good? Should I apply? But once you're admitted, you have to go back a second, maybe even a third time, just to make sure this is the right place for me. I mean, ultimately, everyone in the admission enrollment world, as much as we're trying to make our class and bring in the right profile of student, ultimately it's about finding the right fit. I mean, we all lose if a student comes in and transfers out after one semester or a year.
Right.
The family loses, the student loses, and we lose. So we're, we have a first year retention rate of about 91%. And our students graduate about, I think it's 83% of our students end up graduating. So we take great pride in the fact that we're finding the right students and the right fit. And we want to do even better than that. But I think that's a good indication as you're looking at schools. What's the retention rate? What's the graduation rate? Are they keeping the students that go? And if they're not, perhaps there's something
Great.
they're not doing.
Well,
Anyway.
thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure.
No problem. And you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.